Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahushai, Ba'ishim, Rakakudash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Ba'ishim, Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, the great millstone who rule and teach well. In peace and salutations to Ya'akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Raya with another video, and I'm going to start it off with Revelation chapter 9, verse 12. One woe or destruction is past, speaking of World War I. And behold, there come two woes more hereafter, World War II and this upcoming World War III, which will go nuclear. I'm sure a lot of you have seen by now the reports coming out on how the U.S. has assassinated Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, and that's only just going to further escalate the situation and culminate in this upcoming third woe. And not only did the U.S. assassinate that Iranian general, but also the U.S. is sending even more troops to the Middle East, which is further leading to the fulfillment of Joel chapter 3, the nations being gathered down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. And Jehoshaphat means Yahweh Shaphat, or Yahweh's judgment. And it's the judgment of Yahweh Ba'ishim Yahushai on you heathen nations, chiefly you Edomites, or so-called Caucasians, for touching the apple of his eye, the true children of Israel, who are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. So to all you people out there, you better buckle up, because it's going to be a bumpy ride. Nothing's going to happen to avert this third woe from coming to its fulfillment. And people are already starting to get jittery about it. Real quick from this article on activistpost.com titled "No War with Iran, Code Pink and Other Activists Call for Rallies Against U.S. Aggression After Assassination of Iran General." In this paragraph right here, it reads, "Currently, social media is flooded with hashtags, hashtag World War III, World War III, and World War III, while the puppet press, no matter where you look, is pushing for war with Iran. Others have chosen to push the hashtag no war with Iran, which is all futile. However, many people fear that this move is the equivalent to the murder of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which was one of many catalysts that led the world into World War I. Behold, one woe is past, and two woes more come hereafter." I'm going to go to this article on RT.com titled, "All Bets Are Off. Trump brings conflict with Iran to unprecedented level, just a step short of all-out war." The assassination of a popular Iranian general in Baghdad is a game-changer in the conflict between Washington and Tehran, which had remained restricted to cloak and dagger shenanigans and proxy hostilities, analysts have told RT. The Trump administration escalated its standoff with Iran to a whole new level on Friday by ordering a targeted assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the commander of Iran's Quds forces. The Iranian general was blown up along with 11 other people, including a senior commander of an Iraqi militia backed by Tehran, when their motorcade was hit by U.S.-guided missiles just outside Baghdad International Airport. The attack marks a dramatic and extremely dangerous change in U.S. policies vis-a-vis Iran, Middle East-based journalist and writer Ali Rizk told RT. Trump previously had resorted to what was termed as a maximum pressure campaign based on economic sanctions, trying to choke Iran economically. That policy appears to have failed. Now Trump has resorted to a new policy of targeted assassinations. And best believe that the state of Israel and the Mossad are not too far behind the scenes, pulling the strings and controlling President Trump. Jeremiah 49 verse 20, "The least of the flock shall draw them out." Your Amalekite Edomite brothers over in the land of Israel are going to drag you American Edomites into a cataclysmic war you won't win. Washington claims it was justified in killing Soleimani because the Iranian general was planning attacks on American citizens. More BS propaganda. As the commander of the commando branch of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, he was directly involved in coordinating the activities of various militia groups in Iraq and Syria. The militias played an essential part in fighting against the terrorist group Islamic State, IS, formerly ISIS or ISIL, which is nothing more than a mercenary proxy army for the United States and the State of Israel, in both countries, boosting Iranian regional influence and Soleimani's personal popularity. The American government, which formally designated the IRGC a terrorist organization amid last year's growing hostility towards Iran, appears to see no difference between Soleimani and IS/CIA/Mossad-backed leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who was so-called killed in a U.S. raid last October. But with Soleimani being a senior figure and part of a state apparatus, this was a dangerous delusion, Rizk believes, adding that the president in turn will put crosshairs on every U.S. official. Moscow, Soleimani assassination by U.S., an adventurous move that will flare up tensions, and they most definitely will. Iran cannot let the attack simply slide and has already declared it an act of international terrorism. When Washington put the IRGC on its terrorist list, Tehran did the same for the U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, which seemed like a symbolic gesture at the time, but Iran could now feel justified in targeting any American service member in the Middle East, regardless of his or her rank. If Iran doesn't retaliate, it will lose face. It will appear as a very weak player in the Middle East, which allows its senior officials to be assassinated, said political analyst and filmmaker Andrei Vichkik. If it does retaliate, the U.S. will reserve the right to even annihilate the country, as we saw in the past. Trump's entire policy towards Iran was to put the screws on it without starting an actual shooting war, with the presumable goal of signing a deal better than the Obama-era nuclear multilateral agreement that he had scrapped in 2018. So far, both countries have steered away from any direct military engagement, save for a few lost drones. That's pretty much it with this article. I'm going to go to my second article on NBCnews.com. U.S. to send 3,000 troops to Middle East after embassy attack, Soleimani killing. The soldiers will join roughly 650, though I believe it's 750 others already deployed to the region and stay there for some 60 days, officials said. Joel chapter 2, verse 20. But I will remove far off from you the Northern Army, the North American Army, all branches of the U.S. military, the Marines, the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, etc., and will drive him into a land barren and desolate, the Middle East, more specifically Saudi Arabia, which is going to be the main staging ground for this upcoming war with Iran. With his face toward the EC and what's east of Saudi Arabia, the Persian Gulf, and above the Persian Gulf is Iran, and there's also the Tigris and Euphrates River to the northeast, and his hinder part toward the utmost sea, or behind him, which is the Red Sea, and his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he had done great things. There's going to be a great slaughter of U.S. military personnel in the Middle East during that battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat. If you're a U.S. soldier who finds himself or herself in the Middle East during this upcoming World War III, you better start coming to terms with the fact that that's going to be your final resting place. The United States is sending approximately 3,000 soldiers to the Middle East after thousands of people stormed the compound of the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, 3 U.S. defense officials and 1 U.S. military official confirmed to NBC News on Friday. The news came hours after an American airstrike killed General Qassem Soleimani, the commander of Iran's secretive Quds Force and one of the country's most powerful figures, but U.S. defense officials said the deployments were not in response to the strike. The deployment of additional soldiers from a brigade of the 82nd Airborne Division based at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, comes after thousands of people, most of them affiliated with the Iran-backed Shiite militia group Kataib Hezbollah, descended on the embassy compound Tuesday. The soldiers will join roughly 650 others already deployed to the region and stay there for some 60 days, the officials said. The immediate response force will be spread throughout the region, with some soldiers in Iraq and others in Kuwait. and probably some in Saudi Arabia as well, joining the several thousand other U.S. soldiers that have been deployed to Saudi Arabia throughout 2019. As previously announced, the Immediate Response Force, or the IRF Brigade of the 82nd Airborne Division, was alerted to prepare for deployment and are now being deployed, the Pentagon said in a statement. The brigade will deploy to Kuwait as an appropriate and precautionary action in response to increased threat levels against U.S. personnel and facilities and will assist in reconstituting the reserve. Hey, Akim, we're living in very beautiful times. 2020 has been deemed the year of prophecy, and it's already started off with a literal bang. Now I'm going to go to Joel chapter 3, and I'm going to start at verse 9. As I said earlier in the video, all these things transpiring in the Middle East are leading towards this battle in the valley of Jehoshaphat, the judgment of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai on you heathen nations for touching the apple of his eye, the children of Israel. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, you Edomites or so-called Caucasians, you Ishmaelites or so-called Arabs, you Moabites or so-called Chinese, you Elamites or so-called East Indians, etc., etc. Prepare war, World War III, war with Iran, that battle in the valley of Jehoshaphat, the war of Armageddon. Wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. 3,000 U.S. soldiers being brought to Iraq. Verse 10, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say I am strong, such as Iran. Back in that article on Activist Post, Iran's current president, Hassan Rouhani, has also vowed revenge on Twitter. The flag of General Soleimani in defense of the country's territorial integrity and the fight against terrorism and extremism in the region will be raised, and the path of resistance to U.S. accesses will continue. The great nation of Iran will take revenge for this heinous crime. Let the weak say I am strong. And it'll be interesting to see what Iran's response is to this assassination of one of their top generals. Whatever it may be, it's all inevitably going to culminate in a war against Iran by the U.S. and Israel. And once they start that war with Iran, nations like Russia and China are going to come in on the side of Iran. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, the United States of America, the state of Israel, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, Russia, China, Turkey, the nations of NATO, etc., and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh, and those mighty ones are the death angels of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai, holding back this destruction, waiting to get the go-ahead from the Most High to release it. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, which again means Yahweh's Shaphat, or Yahweh's judgment, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full, the fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. One woe is past, and behold, 2 woes more come hereafter. So with all this being the case, you Akim shouldn't be getting weak right now. You should actually be rejoicing because we're seeing these end times prophecies begin to come to their fulfillment. And we know that our salvation is nearer than when we believed. We know that we're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathens, chiefly Esau, Edom. And that very soon we're going to be the first fruits in the kingdom of heaven, that elect number putting this world back in order. Yahweh willing, you brothers are of that number, and I'm of that number too. So right now, you should be pushing this word as hard as you can to make that calling and election sure. Now I'm going to go to Matthew 24, verse 6. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, these indicators that we're living in the last seconds of these last days. A U.S. war with Iran, an Israeli war with Iran, a U.S. war with Russia, a U.S. war with China, World War III, the War of Armageddon, the battle in the valley of Jehoshaphat, the list goes on and on. See that ye be not troubled, because our salvation is nearer than when we believed, and all these things must come to pass, as it says, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. and the end is not going to truly come until the mark of the beast, which is the RFID/NFC microchip implant, is mandatorily implemented, and everybody has to go through that hour of temptation to see whether they're going to take the chip or not. And then will Yahushai HaMashiach, whom the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, return to not only save his elect, but make war with you heathen nations in the valley of Jehoshaphat. When Yahushai returns, you heathens are going to see what a true total war looks like. I'm going to close it out in 2nd Esdras chapter 13, start at verse 5. And after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men, all these heathen nations, the United States of America, the state of Israel, Russia, China, Turkey, Pakistan, Iran, Iraq, NATO, out of number, from the four winds of heaven, from all across the planet, to subdue the man that came out of the sea, Yahushai HaMashiach. But I beheld, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain, and flew up upon it, that massive chariot, or so-called UFO, the fathership that Yahushua is returning in. But I would have seen the region or place whereout the hill was graven, and I could not. That fathership was so massive that Esdras couldn't see the end of it. And after this I beheld, and lo, all they which were gathered together to subdue him were sore afraid, and yet durst fight, those heathen nations in the valley of Jehoshaphat. And lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held sword, nor any instrument of war, but only I saw that he sent out of his mouth, as it had been, a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempests, so-called laser beams being shot from that chariot, that concentrated heat, which makes any military hardware that you heathens have look like Tonka toys. And they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, and the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude which was prepared to fight, those soldiers, their tanks, their fighter jets, their artillery, and any other military hardware they fight against Yahushai with, and burned them up, every one, so that upon a sudden of an innumerable multitude nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid. When you get hit with that concentrated heat, you're going to turn into powder and a pile of dust. Think about that movie War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise. So with this video, I hope you sincere Akim were edified. Just keep strong and keep pushing this word. And as always, I'm going to say Abba Bol, Kwam Yasharala. Till next time, Shalom.